Okay. And why don't we get started? We did have a lot of registrations show for today's session, so more people will be coming in, I'm sure. But I'll get things started so that we can move along. So hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie Draker, and I am the Associate Director and Program Manager for Work and Culture. I am also the fund administrator for the latest round of Catalyst and Transformation Fund, or the CAT Fund, as also known. I'm joined today by a couple of work and culture colleagues. So my colleague Justine Santiago is on the call, and she will be helping us out with tech support, better her than me. And my colleague Bianca Chambers is also on this call, and she's going to be assisting me with some of the one-on-one sessions and emails as the program progresses if people have questions. So I thought it was a good idea to have her on this call as well. And then in terms of just some general housekeeping today before we dive into the content. So there is closed captioning available if you'd like to enable that. And just a note, you probably saw when you came in that the session is being recorded. We will record the first part of this session where I go over the program details. However, when we move into the Q&A period at the end, we will turn off the recording, just so you know. If applicable, we will capture a generalized summary of any of the questions that come up, or if we need to add clarification to the details that aren't already covered on our program page on the website. Otherwise, any questions that you ask will remain anonymous and not recorded or shared outside of this webinar. Speaking of questions, although we're saving the question period to the end, if something does come to mind while we're chatting today, feel free to enter it into the Q&A for us to address later. There may be some common questions that are already answered by the program guidelines, in which case my colleagues Justine and Bianca may answer those live during the session. But otherwise, we'll revisit the Q&A section at the end. And a note about the questions, because we're only together for a short time today, and due to the nature of the fund, knowing that some organizations are exploring some potentially heavy topics related to their organization's ongoing viability and sustainability, for the purpose of today's info session, we're asking that you keep your questions broad and focused on clarification about the program guidelines and any information that needs clarification from online. If you have additional questions that are specific to your organization or your application preparation, those can be directed to me by email, and we can share that after this session. So a bit more about Working Culture. If you are new to us, we are an Ontario-based nonprofit art service organization, and we're focused on supporting the career development of people who work in the arts. We work in support of all disciplines in creative practices, including heritage and museums, and we support artists, arts managers, and organizations alike, and both people who work in the arts sector and people who hold creative jobs in other sectors. Most people know us and come to us first through our popular job board, but we also conduct workforce research, we create and host career resources on our website, and we develop, adapt, and deliver business skills and entrepreneurial skills training and programming, a great deal of which we do in partnership with organizations right across the province and in many different regions. Because of our unique lens and focus around capacity building in the sector, we were approached several years ago to help administer a pool of funds on behalf of a group of funders that would help arts organizations to investigate and plan a substantive change in their operations. When it first started, it was a program that emerged during the COVID-19 pandemic as a rapid response initiative for arts organizations located specifically in Toronto, and has since evolved and continued as a capacity development fund with an extended provincial reach. So now it's in effect for all of Ontario. And what it is, the program provides funding to arts organizations to explore key questions or challenges facing their organization in order to focus on rebuilding, restructuring, and reforming the way they work and operate. So this is not about programming. It's not about maintaining status quo. It's really about taking a step back and questioning existing assumptions and practices and identifying changes that will strengthen the organization's future through meaningful organizational change. It exists because the fund acknowledges that, arts organizations right now, right across the province, may be asking them questions around their continued viability or how they need to adapt their structure or approach to operate into the future. And they may need to explore directions or diverge significantly from previous or current operational practices. And for this cycle of the CAT Fund, we will be providing grants of up to $15,000 to support exploration projects. So exploration only, no implementation. And it's designed to help reduce the risk of pursuing these kind of major changes, but allowing this time and resources to ask the hard questions and identify a path forward, which is often work that we don't get to do. It's happening off the side of the desk, and we don't necessarily get a chance to really focus on it. So that's really what the spirit of the fund is. In terms of the applicant eligibility, so this program is open to Ontario-based incorporated nonprofit arts organizations and art service organizations, including those with charitable status, as well as formal artist collectives operating on a nonprofit basis that have been operating for more than 5 years and have total revenues of $5 million or under, and as mentioned earlier, are based in Ontario. And we embrace all artistic disciplines, including museums, heritage, and archives. And just to note, if you are applying as an artist collective, you must demonstrate an established history of working together on a shared artistic practice or project. And your CAT project would need to demonstrate how all members of the artist collective have been involved in the collective's development and the future direction being considered through your project. Additionally, collectives of 2 artists must be based all in Ontario, whereas collectives of 3 or more artists must have the majority of its members based in Ontario. And this is a burning question, I think, for many. Previous CAT Fund applicants and recipients are welcome to apply. However, priority will be given to organizations that have not previously received support from the CAT Fund. So it doesn't necessarily preclude past CAT recipients from applying, but please note that you must be also applying for a new and distinctive phase of work or initiative through your exploration project. So it can't be linked to anything that was funded in the past. And in terms of what the CAT Fund, a CAT program funds, a key consideration of this cycle of the CAT Fund is that the proposed exploration project idea must be rooted in a substantive change decision that the applicant needs to make. So that could include exploring making shifts to new business models and organizational structures. In terms of examples there, you might be investigating a new revenue generating model, such as a social enterprise or a new rental system. You may be exploring changing the way your organization is registered or incorporated. So for instance, moving from perhaps a collective or primarily volunteer-led organization to, fully incorporated and professional. You might be exploring new leadership structures that differ significantly from current structure, like a co-leadership model, for instance. You can use the fund to also explore new directions to address your current capacity. So for some organizations, this involves forming strategic partnerships with other organizations, either from inside or outside of the sector, to transform the way they work together over the long term. And that's the key element in that instance. It has to be over the long term, not just project based. You might be doing so to explore the feasibility of shared spaces amongst multiple organizations. It could be even something like exploring a shared staffing model amongst multiple orgs. As an organization, also under this category, you might be exploring perhaps a more efficient way of operating in the short term that will affect the long term as well. So for some organizations, that might mean an assessment of organizational capacity and quote unquote right sizing the organization for a period of time. It could also include transformation of how you work together, including digital transformation. So perhaps exploring the viability and deciding on a model, if applicable, to help you move forward. It can also be used to address organizational life cycle questions. So this could include things like assessing whether or not a mission shift might be happening at your organization, and what you might need to do to remain relevant to the community that you're serving. You might use the funds to explore, create a plan to conduct a merger with another organization and what implications might happen there. You might even use the funds to explore an organizational hibernation if you think it might be time to that, or even up to and including potentially an organizational wind down or closure. So those are just a few examples, and we do have others that were other examples of previously funded project ideas that can be found in the program guidelines on your website if you're looking for a little bit more direction. And in terms of what kind of exploration activities are eligible, you really need to frame this in the sense of, what do you need to do in order to come to your decision during your exploration project phase? So it could involve conducting feasibility studies. So for instance, conducting a go or no-go assessment as to whether the organization can sustainably take on this new direction or this new model or this way of working, whatever it may be. It could include scenario modeling. So, for instance, designing a new share service model across multiple partner organizations, and what that framework might look like across operational, financial, and administrative pillars. It could involve stakeholder consultations or interviews relevant to the proposed project idea, to understand gaps or barriers or opportunities before proposing solutions for, that shared model moving forward. It also can include engaging with experts to help guide those potential changes, and that can include, legal expertise, expertise around human resources or governance or financial changes. It can also include research and benchmarking. So that could be, researching successful operational models currently in use and identifying and mapping a use case for your organization, for instance. And that might be conducted through a combination of internal and external resources. In terms of what the program will not fund, so as I mentioned earlier, this program is not meant to help maintain the status quo. So things like routine strategic planning, including building on existing plans or even ongoing, things like fundraising initiatives, are not eligible. Inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility audits are not eligible. The development or delivery of artistic programming or ongoing activities you may provide is not eligible, and the operative term being their ongoing activities. Capital building projects or infrastructure improvements are not eligible. Neither is hiring new staff to develop or operate a new model. Projects where the primary outcome is delivery or execution rather than learning and coming to a clear decision are not eligible. And perhaps a note there, it may be that you go through this process and determine you cannot take it on. That is a valid learning. Additionally, projects that do not center around a clear decision to be made or question to be addressed are not eligible. And exploration activities that are too broad, vague, or unfocused to be completed within that 8-month timeline are not eligible. So you really need to be thinking about, what is achievable, what can you accomplish within that time frame of up to 8 months. This funding cycle, as we mentioned earlier, also does not support implementation phases, including piloting or formally launching, scaling, or operationalizing new models, programs, or approaches. So applicants should instead focus on exploration and learning and considering how they will resource, sustain, and advance their learnings beyond the exploration project timeline. In terms of eligible costs, so for this grant of up to $15,000, you can allocate for reasonable staff hours spent directly working on the project to coordinate the project activities. It can include professional fees for consultants, specialists, advisory support, etc. And a note on that, while we don't require you to submit a minimum number of quotes for any consultants or specialists hired, or even like have the exact name or company picked out as part of your application, it can help strengthen the case if you do provide a quote or a backgrounder on who you'd like to work with, to show that you've researched the kind of expert you want to engage and you've factored in an appropriate level of compensation. Because knowing how these projects have gone in the past, sometimes a majority of that cap budget could be going towards engaging that external expertise. So something to keep in mind. Travel and venue fees related to the project are also eligible, as well as up to 15% for admin and overhead. So that can cover anything that's not, directly covered by staff time. Now, we don't have a budget template that we ask you to fill out. you're welcome to use one of your choosing. But we do have an example of how you might structure yours in the program guidelines if you are looking for a bit of guidance. And in terms of ineligible project costs, so this fund will not support costs to hire new staff positions, severance pay, capital repairs, upgrades, or building costs, contribution to endowment funds, contribution to debt repayment or servicing, and like many other grants, any costs incurred prior to the project start date and that extend past the project deadline for completion. So those are the ineligible costs. If you do have any questions on that, you can always ask us. And in terms of the project or the important dates to keep in mind, so the this cycle of the CAT Fund program opened on July 20th, and the application deadline closes on August 28th, 2026. We aim to send out the notification of results by late November 2026. It will largely depend on the uptake and the application numbers, but that's what we're hoping to do. And in terms of the project timelines, projects must start between January 1st, 2027 and March 31st, 2027, and then must be completed within 8 months of that project start date. If we do find that we are inundated with applications for this period and are not able to notify by the end of November as planned, we'll of course proactively contact all applicants and let them know, and then work with the successful recipients to adjust project dates if needed. And in terms of the assessment process, so the assessment and decision process is going to be done by Working Culture's CAT Fund Review Committee. Organizations will have the option to request anonymity in their application process, and then Working Culture will have the final say on eligible expenses. So, we do understand that some organizations may be exploring really thorny issues or might be exploring projects that might question their ongoing sustainability and things like potentially winding down or closure, and they might not want that shared with the public, and if that's the case, you can certainly request that you remain anonymous to anyone from the funder group, and through any public acknowledgement of the fund. The projects will be measured using a scoring rubric according to organizational goals. So is there a clear challenge or question or opportunity the organization is trying to address? Does the project align with the organization's mission, strategic priorities, and future direction? And has the organization explained why this work is important? Why now? Why is the right time to undertake it? We'll also be reviewing the project plan. So has the applicant laid out a clear and reasonable plan for the project, including a reasonable timeline to achieve the project's identified goals? Does the project demonstrate a strong likelihood of generating useful insights or informing future decision making? We'll also be looking at the project budget. So is the project budget reasonable and appropriate for what the project aims to achieve? And we'll also be looking at the learning and evaluation impact. So has the organization identified what it hopes to learn through this project? Will the project help the organization make more informed decisions about that future change, adaptation, or growth? So a key thing to reinforce here again is remember that CAT is for this stream of a cycle of CAT, it is an exploration stream. So we're not necessarily looking for organizations that already have all the answers per se. That is okay. We are looking for organizations that can clearly articulate the questions they need to investigate, explain why those questions matter in this moment in time, and demonstrate a thoughtful plan for learning from that process and coming to a decision. And as I mentioned earlier, it could be that the decision is not to pursue the idea, and that is valuable learning as well. I mean, we don't want organizations taking on undue risk to explore and potentially implement something that in the long run is not going to work. That is really the spirit of the CAT Fund. And so, in addition, for the assessment process, we'll also consider some of the following elements for the final selection of CAT Fund recipients. We want to make sure there's a range of disciplines represented, a range of organization types, so ASOs, arts orgs, collectives, etc., as well as different sizes and scales. And we'll also be paying attention to the regions represented, looking to include representation from right across Ontario. And in order to apply, you will go to the CAT Fund page on our website and take some time to review the program guidelines, download a copy of the application questions to review and prep in advance if you find that helpful. It's available on the site as well. And you will complete and submit an online form via the link on the web page. And this is just a bit of a snapshot of some of the application details that you'll need to provide. So for organizations, we'll need their incorporation or charitable registration number. We'll also need financial information. So for organizations, that's the most recent audited financial statements. For artist collectives, that might not produce an audited statement. It could be recent and signed financial statements that clearly show the collective's revenues, expenses, assets, etc. You'll also need governance approval. So that's from a board or equivalent governance or oversight body. And then in terms of project documentation, we're looking for project objectives, learning and evaluation expectations. If you're, working with various project contributors, details on those individuals. We need a project plan and timelines, your project budget. If you are exploring a merger or structured partnership, we need proof of a collaborative agreement, and that could be, a letter of support from all the partners involved to demonstrate, their active involvement in the project and support of it. And then other support materials, if applicable. And those could be a variety of things depending on what you're trying to achieve. It could be, a draft business case that you've been working on. It could be a recent study. If you are looking to engage external expertise, it could be a letter from somebody you want to work with that kind of demonstrates the alignment and what you want to achieve. So it's fairly open. And if you do have questions on what might be applicable, you can always ask. But really, what we're looking for is anything that will help reinforce the case for the project. And as I said earlier, why this applicant, why now, and what the hope for outcomes are as a result of the project. And if you are looking for more guidance, as I mentioned earlier in the program guidelines, there's some examples, broad examples, I should say, of previously funded CAT ideas and CAT aligned ideas that might offer you some guidance. You can also watch a playlist through our website of previous CAT fund recipients to learn more about their projects and the type of activities they worked on. And additionally, if you do have any questions around project alignment, you're welcome to be in touch with me. And at this point, I've covered all of the program overview and guideline information. So we're going to move into the question and answer period. So at this point, I will turn off the recording so that we can go into that phase.